Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. As Ukraine War news update, second part there for the 6th of November 2024. And so it begins, says Tim White, and so it begins. Republican Senator Marco Rubio has told NBC it's time for the US to end the Ukraine crisis. He added that Trump wants an end to the war, but that doesn't make him a Putin fan. Rubio has vice chaired the Senate Intelligence Committee. He knows that selling Ukraine down the river will give Russia a green light to attack again, says Tim White. Moldova, or maybe NATO next, who knows. Already, less than 12 hours since the declaration of Trump winning, we've got one of his major surrogates saying, yeah, now's the time to finish the Ukraine crisis. There you go. Okay, so Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni announced the intention of Italy and other NATO allies to increase military aid to Ukraine, which is good news. Meloni considers one of the main achievements during Italy's presidency of the G7 to be the implementation of the agreement on the use of the interests of Ukraine of revenues generated from Russian frozen assets. But that'll be good news if she's on board with upping the aid to Ukraine. Italy's actually one of these countries that probably isn't doing enough, to be perfectly frank. Okay, Null Reports says NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte calls for action as North Korean troops deploy to Russia's Kursk region. He warns this deepens the conflict and threatens global security. Quote, now we need the political commitment to continue this course in the long term. So far, our support has helped Ukraine continue the fight, but we need to do much more to change the trajectory of the conflict. We need to raise the price for Putin and his friends, the authoritarian regimes. Absolutely. German aid to Ukraine says the delivery of the first RCH-155, these are the new self-propelled artillery systems that Ukraine was due to be delivered, will be slightly delayed. CEO of KNDS Deutschland, Ralf Ketzel, stated this in an interview with Hartpunkt. The first RCH-155 self-propelled artillery systems will not be delivered to Ukraine until April next year. Deliveries were previously expected to begin at the end of 2024. Germany has pledged a total of 54 of these state-of-the-art artillery systems to Ukraine, and the delivery is set to continue until at least 2028. Right, this is a real shocker, but I wonder if Joe Biden's just going to throw caution to the wind, say sod it, do what you like, guys. There's a delay in the ASE 890 aircraft transfer to Ukraine. These are the Swedish radar planes, a bit like the AWACS, but instead of having a circular radar on top, it has two, well, basically a single line down the middle, but it sends out in two directions, both left and right of the row of radar, whatever, however you call it. So it has not quite 360 degrees. It kind of misses a little bit towards the tail and a little bit towards the nose. But generally, when you're flying around, it's good enough. It's decent enough piece of kit that Ukrainians really need. Well, they're due to give 2 of these to Ukraine. Approval from the US is required. Quote, without the Americans, none of this aircraft transfer will happen because it contains a significant amount of American-made equipment. The aircraft is Swedish, but it has a lot of American equipment. So without the consent of the Americans, and I haven't heard that they've agreed to transfer the Saab 340 to us, this isn't going anywhere, the expert said. In other words, according to him, Sweden's announcement doesn't mean the deal is sealed. We thank the Swedes for opening the gate, but now it's up to the Americans, and this is where things get uncomfortable, the expert added. To support his statement, Kivrolap recalled that Poland purchased 2 such Saab 340s a few years ago and integrated them in nearly a year and a half. When the Swedes said they were ready to transfer 2 Saab 340s, it was initially announced that training would take place about 6 months and that they were prepared for delivery. Then Biden's interesting message suggested that 1 aircraft would be sufficient instead of 2. I won't comment on my reaction. It was quite surprising, the expert shared. I mean, why would you hold back? Jesus, man. Sort it out. Right. Talking about Germany again, it's planning to reintroduce national service to strengthen its national and collective deterrence and defence capabilities, says Germany at NATO, and build up a strong reserve. The new legislation was approved by the cabinet today and will be debated in the Bundesrat and Bundestag early next year. Franz Stefan Gardi says, for context, the draft law targets 5,000 additional Bundeswehr recruits per year, aligning with the current training capacity. There's also an option to gradually increase the number. Currently, about 10,000 young German citizens serve voluntarily each year. I presume that's in the context of a more volatile regional situation. Now, European leaders have been reassuring Ukraine in the wake of Trump's US victory. So UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer confirmed all parties continued to support Kyiv. Sweden's Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said, quote, "We are well prepared for this." And France's President Macron urged a coordinated European strategy. Okay, so William Browder says, now that Trump has been elected, US military aid for Ukraine will soon dry up. If we have any intention of not letting Putin win, the EU and UK must now seize the $300 billion of Russian central bank reserves and use that money to support Ukraine. Absolutely, just nick it and turn it into liquid cash and give it to Ukraine. And at least, you know, Trump's hardly going to be finding that a problem. You know, it's not US money. I'm sure Americans would be more keener to do something like that. So David Patrikarakos says, as Donald Trump looks set to win, Joe Biden must do one thing: expedite all military aid to Ukraine and unchain the Ukrainians, allow them to use US weapons inside Russia. I know everyone's forgotten about him, but he's still the president. He can at least do this. Absolutely, Joe Biden, sort it out. Has to happen. Henry Rosenberg said today would be a good day for Joe Biden to give Zelensky the green light to do whatever the hell he wants. 100%. Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski called for immediate European action on defence spending and migration policy as US elections results emerge. And Jürgen Naudit, German, I think he also, he doesn't say his job there, just a director. I think he's also written in newspapers. But Jürgen Naudit says, what I read this morning, this is a wake-up call for Europe. We must now take a deep breath and get to grips with it. 3% for NATO is not enough. 3% spending of GDP, that is. We must do it ourselves. We must not waste any time. Rich Europe must now support Ukraine. And this will be a stressful phase in transatlantic relations. And you're welcome to add to this. And there's an interesting one here. Ukraine must start developing their own nuclear deterrent ASAP. So do nations like Poland and Germany. That is fascinating. I've heard this be suggested a number of times. Lesson here is never rely on someone else for your security. Invest in defence, invest in your military. Another lesson here is to not take foreign propaganda operations lightly. They will rot you from within. I couldn't have put that better myself. Absolutely spot on. This is what we should have been doing back in 2008, especially in 2014, and the last wake-up call was nearly 3 years ago. We in Europe need to take this seriously. We have had no clear consistency when dealing with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that needs to stop. So I don't know what we're going to see from the Europeans. It depends how much money is available and what sort of political willpower there is. Max24 reports from The Telegraph, the EU should have its own army, according to the Prime Minister of Luxembourg. He said this amid fears that Trump will withdraw US security for Europe if he returns to the White House, which he, of course, will. The first steps towards a common military could be taken by a, quote, coalition of the willing among member states, he said. And then finally, Ukraine and Bulgaria are currently pursuing a deal to transfer excess nuclear equipment intended for Bulgaria's Belin nuclear power plant to Ukraine's Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant. This will make it possible to complete construction of reactors 3 and 4 at the Ukrainian plant, according to the Atlantic Council. Nuclear power plants are at least somewhat protected by their nuclear status, and so that's really really unsurprising there that they're trying to expand the size of their nuclear portfolio, because that's unlikely to get hit by missiles, or at least you'd hope that was the case, right? And then finally, I'm just going to read this. This is James Landale. I was sent this by my mate Tim Williamson, thank you. Here are some early thoughts, says a diplomatic correspondent. I don't know what newspaper, but if you're thinking about Russia, then you might be thinking about Trump. Sorry, I've got my son sending me messages and trying to phone me. Thinking about Trump and worst case scenario, and we've just heard Marco Rubio saying, yeah, it's all over. One thing that we can hang on to that might happen, and it's going to be nothing to do with his sense of ideological duty, sense of international member of the international community, and any kind of moral or political obligation or evaluation. It's kind of playing to his sense of, you can be the winner here. And I said this over the months. This is not the first time I've talked about something like this. This is coming from James Landau. Here are some early thoughts. Trump's approach may be predictable, more transactional, bilateral, protectionist than Biden, but his decision-making may be more unpredictable, and the world is more turbulent than during his first presidency. So on the Ukraine, Trump has promised to push Zelensky to cut a deal with Putin, one that may involve a loss of territory. Ukraine fears he will reduce US military and financial support, which depends on how fast that may happen and what Europe can do, if anything, to fill the gap. But it is not clear how much Putin would want a deal. So remember, we've heard that Putin has said we're not up for a deal. Russia said, yeah, no, a deal's not going to be on the cards, even if Trump wants it really, really quickly. Putin's not going to be the sort of person who wants to be seen to be forced to the table by someone else. He has his own agency, and he won't like to be seen as subservient to Trump, right? So if Russia keeps fighting, Trump may not want Ukraine to be seen to lose on his watch. He also seems less fearful of escalation than Biden. Some analysts do not rule out an increase in US support. Now, I think this is less likely by point of fact that he and all of his staff around him, including JD Vance, have been very clear on a lack of support for Ukraine. And so I doubt he'll do a 180 shift and then suddenly support Ukraine more. But the only hope I think that we have would be to play to his sense of ego. You could be the one responsible for winning in Ukraine. You could be the hero of Ukraine in the world. You could be the one that has one over against that other strong man. And you see yourself as a strong man. So bish bash bosh, give more aid to Ukraine, and even be bigger about it, but let them do more, untie their hands. You could be the one that does that. I don't know. It's a possibility. I think it's unlikely, but it could happen. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.